if I posted the real title, I'd start getting emails and concerns and all the mishigasim. You'll see what I mean. Okay, first of all, good morning, everyone. A Freilichen post-Purim world to everyone. The month of Adar is sponsored by the Aaron family in honor of their 20th wedding anniversary and Mikey's 18th birthday. Shachar and Alex Avram celebrating a year fulfilling the mitzvah of Yeshiva Aretz and their wedding anniversary. Joe and Jonah Brooke in memory of Chayalea Bas Yosef. Joe's mother on her 10th yahrzeit. Also, Jonah's Abba needs a big refuah shlema. He sent me the name. He's with him right now in the East Coast. Shev refuah shlema. Brent and Jolie Eyes in memory of Zelda Reisel Bas Meir Chaim, Brent's mother on her 15th yahrzeit. Anonymously for the refuah shlema of Kol Chole Amo Yisrael. So today's shir really is who are the Erev Rav of today. You understand why you can't really, I mean, you could, but you'd get in trouble. But it's not really, it's so not problematic, and you'll see why. In order to understand what we're going to be doing today, we have to go a little bit different than we usually do. We got Shoshana, one of your Rebbes is here too. Source number 3. We have to do some very important work today. This parsha of Parshat Ki Tisa always happens to be, to anyone that is kind of like went a little bit asleep during Truma in Tetzaveh and the beginning of Ki Tisa, Parshat Ki Tisa wakes you up because you can't just read the psukim of Chet HaEgel and be like, oh, so that happened, and right, that just happened. Chet HaEgel, the sin of the golden calf, is something that always wakes us up. It always, the Mefarshim on it, always drive us to say, okay, look deeper into the sugya. What do you think it was really all about? What do you think was really going on? How do you understand how an Am that just experienced what they experienced can fall so low into putting together a golden calf? Always, this is like this. Hi. This is always like this. And it's so interesting that no matter how many Torahs we have from the past, and how many things basically have like, how many good answers we've gotten from the past, it's like, it's never ever enough. It's never enough. We always need to understand it so much more, so much deeper. We're going to build the Mahalach of the Shir today. You'll see it's a little bit different until we get to Reb Tzadok, but we have to see a few things that Chazal tell us regarding Chet HaEgel, regarding the sin of the golden calf, and I think that it'll be something that'll be very helpful for our understanding of relationships to rabbis and to tzaddikim. Very interesting, in a very healthy way. Look at this. The first thing we're going to see is there's a very interesting Medrash, which when it's read wrong, can lead people to really feel alienated and not just simply not understanding. Look at this. The Medrash says, En dor vador she'eno notel unkiya mimaaseh ha'egel. There is no generation, including our generation, that doesn't carry a little bit of the unkiya. You see unkiya in the bottom, mishkal mu'at. A little bit of weight from maaseh ha'egel, from the act of the golden calf. Zot omeret. The ramifications of such an inyan, such a backwards reality, weighs on a little bit on every single generation until Mashiach comes. Zot omeret, exactly the bilbul, the confusion that the act of Chet HaEgel caused is found. That confusion has had a hishtalshelus. It's like it's gone down generation after generation. Every generation, to a certain extent, suffers from the confusion which emanated from the act of Chet HaEgel. That's what it says. Now, you could ask a shaila and saying, what did we do? We have enough stuff on our plate. We have enough confusion. Why Chet HaEgel as well? Why should we be responsible for the union of Chet HaEgel every single door? I don't think this Midrash is saying that you're getting punished for it. I think he's just saying the reality of what happened with the golden calf kind of went into our spiritual DNA to a certain extent. So it's not anything that you did or didn't do. It is what it is. This is kind of like now mutba, which means it became into the teva of one of the milchamot, one of the things we have to struggle with in every single generation. It's not that we did anything wrong, us. I mean, we There's other things we could say are achrayut, but this thing of putting chet ha'egel on us is just explaining a reality as opposed to dictating an endless punishment. Again, en dor vador she'eno notel kiya mima'aseh ha'egel. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'akol na'ed dvarim. Thank you. So, how do we understand the weight of chet ha'egel? How do we understand this on the pnimius of it? The problem, really, with what happened with the sin of the golden calf. This is like, it opens a whole world. This is a much longer shiur than what we're doing right now. It really is. Maybe we'll do it. Maybe I'll add a little bit later because there are a lot of pieces here that I think will be very helpful. But for now, we're going to go straight to the first time that we could think there's maybe a little bit of a smell of the root of chet ha'egel. And it's very, I hope you realize it's not really the root of chet ha'egel, but it can be interpreted as one. And I feel so not comfortable doing this here because Mama Rachel's right behind us, right? But this is the Torah, we have to learn it. Mama Rachel is very tzibrochen, she's very sad. And she gets agitated to the extent that she gets her husband agitated as well. At what point? When she goes to him and says, Kadima, what's going on over here? Get me children. Put it like that. That's more or less, let's just cut right to the chase. What does she say to Yaakov? She says, Havali banim. So we learned earlier this year a gewaldige Torah. I don't remember if it was here in Shul. But one of the reasons Yaakov Avinu told her, what are you kidding me? We're in Chutz La'aretz. You think I can do these miracles in Chutz La'aretz? There's no way I could do it in Chutz La'aretz. That was one of the answers. That's all Sod, Drash maybe. Here, what we're going to try to understand is what was she asking him to do? Who did she think he was? Who did Rachel think Yaakov was? Did she think he was human? What do you think? Do you think Rachel thought that Yaakov was a human being? Or do you think she thought that he was like, I don't know, godly, chetzi, malach, greater than her, definitely, because otherwise she would say, I'm going to go directly with me, I don't need you, right? What else? What do you think she thought of who Yaakov Avinu was? By saying, you got to make this happen. She may have understood him to be a certain type of tzaddik that we're trying to not connect to in this shiur. Okay? She may have thought that he's the one that basically decides what happens, Poel Yeshuot, a miracle maker, and he's the reason when things happen good or things happen bad. Perhaps she sees that, maybe she thought the only reason why Leah had children is because Yaakov Avinu was doing it. Maybe. Maybe, think about it. Maybe she thought the reason why Leah keeps on giving birth is because Yaakov Avinu is sitting in a room late at night and he's banging against the tent or whatever and saying, are you doing sgulas? You got to do this, Hashem. And it's him that made it happen, right? So this is a lot of the Pirush, a lot of the Rishonim have this kind of energy towards Rachel Imeinu. And it's very much not the way we want to lityaches to Rachel Imeinu. So I saw something from the Ramah. The Ramah, we generally know him as to be the one that paskins he's in the Shulchan Aruch, right? He's the way that the Ashkenazic world of halacha follows, right? But here the Ramah is a book called Torat Ha'olah, the Perushim. It's an amazing thing. Ve'yadua sherachel lo nishtatet. Nishtatet comes from the word of that she became fooled, like shota, right? She didn't get fooled. She'Yaakov hu anoten la banim, that Yaakov is the one that actually gives her children, even though the pshat kind of says that, havali banim. She says, don't get confused. Rachel Imeinu did not think that Yaakov Avinu was the one that gives her children. Ela shekivna bederech emtza'i. What was she looking for? A mediator. She was looking for the middle entity between her and God. Sheyeh mevakesh umitchanen avura. That there should be someone that comes and davens and begs on her behalf.
She has the model of Yitzchak and Rivka.
100%. She has the greatest model. It's Girsa de Ankusach. It's like, she knows what it's like. right? She knows what it's like. Her husband was basically produced, kiviyachol, seemingly in a manner that would make it clear why she's saying what she's saying. Kilashon Rashi b'dibra matchil havali. So Tomer, he's saying over here, Rachel knew that it's Hashem, that everything's from Hashem. So why does she say havali banim to Yaakov? Because she believes in his koach of being somewhere in the middle between her and Hashem. Now, is that wrong? What do you think about that? Is that wrong, looking for that mediator to be the one that can basically bring the tefillas even closer? Halacha kind of established that when you daven with a minyan, you have a shliach of the tzibur. You have a chazan. You have someone in the middle. I once heard the most beautiful parish of explaining why do you go to rebbes and give them your names and everything. It's very simple. We said it a few times. And this is very important. It'll help us with today. Why do you go to a rebbe? Because a rebbe is someone, hopefully for you, that really believes in God, right? And you maybe don't believe so much. You have sveikas. So you'd rather these names be by someone that fully believes in God when they're davening for them than maybe doubtful little you. The problem with that is that it belittles you. And you don't know if that moment where your God is on, your Hashem, you're feeling on, maybe that moment is what's going to crack open the gates. But we understand this. The Rama is saying, listen, Rachel, maybe she thought about herself that she was a Ktana Emunah. Maybe. But what did she know about Yaakov Avinu? He's stark. He's stark. He doesn't have off days. He doesn't have godly off days. My husband, she says, my husband Yankele, he is on. She knew him so well. She knew him so well, and they were together for so long already by then. And she saw what he went through. She saw the years of him being tortured by her father, and how he never, ever for a second thought that Hashem kind of forgot about him. So she says, listen, me in my private life, I'm on, sometimes I'm off. But him, he's an emtsai because he's always on. So she wants to go to the person she knows best, who happens to be the person that's always on, saying, act for me as my shlicha, be my Rebbe. Be my Rebbe. I'm bringing you a kvittel. So you ever notice that Rebbes don't ever really give back kvittels and say, why are you bringing it to me? You take it. Because Rebbes understand that they're representing the real Rebbes, the real Rebbes. Okay, so that's the Ramah explaining Rachel Imeinu's understanding of the role of Yaakov Avinu. But now we're getting to our parsha. Now we're not talking about an individual, we're talking about the Am. There's a big group of people right now. And when it comes to the aftermath of Chet HaEgel, Hashem Yitbarach uses very interesting word, which will help us understand. Hashem says, listen to this word. Hashem says to Moshe Rabbeinu, Lech reid ki shichet. Does anyone know what the next word is? Amcha. Interesting. Go down because your chevra started to mess things up. Suddenly they're not your chevra, Hashem? Your chevra, Moshe Rabbeinu? What's going on over here? So in order to understand this, we also know that there's a concept called Erev Rav. Who were the Erev Rav, the initial Erev Rav? What do we know about them?
Egyptians, no?
Who were they? The taggers, Nachon, they tagged along.
They were interested in converting.
But you have to say that. No,
He said they were.
huh? Exactly. We're saying that with what do you call these? Quotation marks, right? They were interested in. I'm saying that people that are going to be listening, they were interested in converting. So they really had a really bad stench, mamash. They mamash. We know that when it comes to gerus, we have to be so makpid. We have a Masorah, being very in a loving way, but we have to be very makpid. This was a fascinating shimush for me. The 2 years before I moved back to Eretz Yisrael, I was somehow I was learning one-on-one with the head of a Beis Din in Los Angeles, and we were learning Aruch HaShulchan. It was like a really an interesting and beautiful time in life, learning one-on-one with this. He lives here. He lives in the Gush, and it's Rabbi David Ru. If you know his wife, Nama Ru. Maybe they go by Rao? Is it Rao or Ru? Ru, Rabbi David Ru. He was my Rav, and we were learning one-on-one for a while. And he thought it'd be really good that I would also have Shimush. Shimush meaning that it would be like hands-on. Also, he knew I wanted to go and learn and be a Rav. So he said, let's do some hands-on stuff with you, right? Some of it was pretty intense, like every Sunday for a long tkufa, I was basically sitting on a beis din for gittin, for having to witness gets, or being a shliach to drop off a get. Why? Because the halacha is that the shliach, if it's a get through shlichus, the shliach can't end up marrying the woman that's being divorced, right? So how do you prevent that from happening? You send a kohen, because the kohen can't marry, gam kacha is asur to marry a grusha. My father was not happy that this was my Sunday morning activities at the age of 19. It was not exactly didn't add to the reservoir of enjoying life and seeing the beauty. I tell you stories. Oh my God, a woman one time, I have to get this off my, one time, a woman, I can understand this, mamash, I can understand this. Some guy that was mamish, not good. They come to a get and he's saying her, okay, I'm sending you away, right? That's a very hard thing to makabel. That's how it's designed. Without getting too technical, that's a very hard thing for a woman. That what you think you're sending me away, I'm sending you away, kilo, right? But that's not how it works. So, mamish, in the Rav's office, he says, "This is yours," and then she says, "And this is for you." And she pulls out an egg and, mamish on his forehead, got on me, got on the Rav, got on the. A lot of these kind of funky. Anyway, you'll see where I'm going with this. So the shimush, right? One of the things that we had to do also was to also sit on the be a beis din by gerus, which is a very intense thing for people that are converting. And there was one beautiful Mexican family that joined our chevra in LA, the Happy Minyan, and it was a mother and two teenage children and one younger kid, and we had to, for the bris, and then for the tvila also, which I don't know if you've ever seen it, but basically, obviously it's tznius wise, but it's like you see a head come out from the water through a towel to be made that it was a tvila kshera, right? Because it's a man there, right? But I saw that moment of asking, like that second before they became a yid, are you mamish sure, right? And I davened from that moment on that Hashem, I want you to ask me that question every day, and I want to answer like this woman did. Yes, I would. That moment of that gerus instilled within me, like every day, Asher bachar bana mikol ha'amim, more than any of the svarim I've ever learned, because you see it in front of your eyes. But there's a reason why we asked that shaila a second before, because we have a history. We have a history. We have a history about this. We have a history that we even go much, further back in the recent history to the time of Yeshua, with conquering the land, and certain people that also claimed that they wanted to join Am Yisrael, and unfortunately later on it caused trouble. So we have to have a lot of siyat dishmaya with these things, that on the one hand be so infinitely loving and open-hearted, and in the same way try to understand what is the Torah telling us with the fact that the Torah tells us, V'gam erev Rav ala itam. That's mamish the Torah is saying to us, Erev Rav also left with them. The Torah could have said, V'gam hagerim alu itam. It doesn't. It says straight out, Erev Rav ala itam. Reb Shamshon Raphael Hirsch is not someone that we quote often in this shiur, although I'm sure you hear it a lot by Shoshana, because he's mamasha, one of the brains of all brains, and we should be zocheh to learn a lot more of his Torah. There's so much in it. He's going to help us here understand how the Erev Rav really influenced the way that the Am started thinking about Moshe Rabbeinu and the problematic relationship which could have really caused a lot more damage. Look what he says. Reb Shamshon Raphael here says like this: Hem lo ra'u b'Moshe et oseh retzono shel Hashem bilvad. Now, he doesn't attribute this over here to the Erev Rav, but you'll see how it's connected. Am Yisrael Tcheta Egel. Moshe Rabbeinu is doing this miracle. But can you imagine who Moshe Rabbeinu was for these Yidden? He was everything. He was everything. He was father, mother, brother, Melamed, everything. He was everything for them. They were all like his children. He was mamash, a shepherd. They were all his children. But they didn't just see at Moshe as being the one that does what Hashem wants. הם לא ראו במשה את עושה רצונו של השם בלבד, אלא הם ראו בו איש שבכוח השפעתו להטות את רצון האלוקות. They saw in Moshe Rabbeinu that he was a person that with his koach, he could lehatot. Do you know what that word is? Lehatot means to steer, direct Hashem's will, Hashem's ratzon. ושבכוח ישותו להבטיח חסות מטעם האלוקות. And with his koach of Yeshus, of just who he was, he could להבטיח chasut. Chasut means, you hear this today a lot in modern Hebrew. Chasut is like, what's that? Kind of, yeah. Basically, coverage. Yeah. He could promise coverage. He's got it. He's got this like deal because of who he is. He could cover, right? It's a very interesting choice of wording here, right? Mitam ha'elokut, right? So listen to this. Beinei ha'anashim ha'ele, in the eyes of this people, Reb Shamshon Raphael Hirsch says, Lo haya ze Hashem she'hotzi'am miMitzrayim be'emtza'uto shel Moshe. It wasn't God that took Yidden out of Mitzrayim through Moshe. That's not the story. Ela haya ze Moshe shehita et retzon Hashem. It was Moshe that steered, that kind of like guided the ratzon of Hashem la'asot et ma'aseh ha'geula hazot. They saw Moshe Rabbeinu as being the cause for eventually the effect of God's decision to do the Geula. Now, anyone that learns Torah today and learns Parshat Shmot understands that this whole idea of Geula was revealed to Moshe Rabbeinu by the burning bush. Back then, how much did they know about the Moshe Rabbeinu's one-on-one conversations with God? If we know anything about Moshe Rabbeinu, humility is probably number one. Can you imagine him going up to people and saying, listen, you want to know why you should listen to me? The living Lord revealed himself to me by the burning bush, not to you. Oh, and what did he say? He told me about this great idea. How would you didn't know? Moshe Rabbeinu was also, his questions by the burning bush is saying, how am I ever going to give this over? I'm also kvad peh. I'm also like, I have a speech impediment. But also, who's going to actually believe that this, that you have I met the living Lord. I met Hashem, and Hashem says to me, I have this idea for Am Yisrael. It's called Geula. It's going to happen like this, and follow me. He's saying over here, Rav Shamshon Hirsch is saying something very interesting. You have to understand how many of the people started viewing Moshe Rabbeinu. Not that Hashem said, I have a good leader with great qualities. He's going to be the one to redeem you. But rather, what Hashem ended up doing was because this great leader knew how to spin the wheel right. So it's not, is it denying the existence of Hashem? No. It's belittling, it's confusing.
Also just the word Yeshus is like...
Yeah.
The word Yeshus with Moshe Rabbeinu. Okay.
But they think this is like... But that's how he's looking at this. Now he says there's a tikkun for this every year at Pesach. Why? Look at the bottom. Lachen, en shmo shel Moshe Rabbeinu muskar klal b'kol hanusach shel Haggadah shel Pesach. That's why Moshe Rabbeinu's name is not in the Megillah. It's not in Megillah. Look where my head is. It's not in the Haggadah. It's okay, on Purim I was saying Haggadah. Instead of Megillah, I think, once or twice. So now I was saying it like this. So he says over here, Reb Shamshon Hirsch is saying, this is exactly why Moshe Rabbeinu's name is not mentioned in the Haggadah shel Pesach. Why? כדי שנתחנך, שאיננו תלויים בנחיצותו של שום אישיות, יהיה מה שיהיה. That we're not dependent, Mamish, the Litvak's having such a na right now from this word, that we're not dependent in the necessity of any individual, yeh Moshe, no matter what it is. Doesn't mean you don't need a leader. But what it means is you have Hashem. You have Hashem, and Hashem has you. And if Hashem wants to get a message, and if you were that refined, right, you don't need, kivyachol, it says like this, don't depend on your warped understanding of the mediator. Don't depend on it, because it could lead you to a very confusing place, which is what? That what ends up happening is only because this tzaddik was able to convince God otherwise, was able to steer God away from what he was maybe going to do. Now, we have a lot of problems with this. And the main one is a statement, tzaddik gozer HaKadosh Baruch Hu mekayim. Yeah?
I'm just like, this is rolling around in my brain, but like that word yeshus is like exactly the opposite of what we're, like the whole idea of a Rebbe is bittul, right? So what you're going to a Rebbe for is the bittul in them, not the yeshus in them, right? You're going for the part of that's Hashem
Right.
shining through them.
But don't get hung up on this word, because when he...
No, what I'm saying that they're like confused, like meaning that's the... I think
No.
I'm not understanding it.
I have to clarify it. They're saying, Rav Shamshon Hirsch is saying, B'koach yeshuto, they feel that just in the koach of how strong he is. And the koach of like...
Maybe that's a misunderstanding.
For sure,
That's what I'm saying. Is there misunderstanding?
For sure, they don't understand. Right? So it's good what you're saying. In the koach of his ayin is what actually made him Moshe Rabbeinu, not the koach of his yeshus. Yeah, let's say the Gemara. Yeah, 100%. So, but it's just fascinating that this is how Rav Shamshon Hirsch is saying that we have a tikkun for this every Leil Seder. Every Leil Seder, Moshe Rabbeinu was not there in the Agadah to remind us that and this is really all smelling from the Erev Rav, that it's not that Moshe Rabbeinu was the one that convinced God to change his mind. Now, you could think that quite often when it comes to tefillahs. And I've quoted to you so many times the greatest 36 seconds I ever saw on YouTube. It was when Koren put out their siddur of Rav Soloveitchik's Torah, Perush on Tefillah, and they had a snippet of an audio of one of his shiurim. It's his Yortzeit coming up, Chol Pesach. And Rav Soloveitchik said that the same question of like when you daven, like are you really davening to change God's mind? And what happens when like a decree is lifted from you? Did you change God's mind? He said, Mapiton. What happens to a Jew through tefillah is that they become a different person. So the Gzar Din that was on you is not on you, not because God lifted it from you, but it's because you're not in that same place anymore. You're in a different place. So what was on you there still is there, but guess what? You're not there anymore. You've moved to another place. That's very important to understand, how we relate to tefillah as well. But obviously, there are a lot of sources in Chassidut specifically that don't exactly map it out like this, although they would all agree that it was Hashem's dream and Hashem's picture and story to bring the Yidden out of Mitzrayim, and Moshe Rabbeinu was the greatest man because of his nothingness, not because he was so big and powerful, which caused things to move. But the role of Rebbe and Tzaddik is very different in different Hasidic courts, very, very different. But there was one court that didn't get confused at all with this stuff, and that's the court of Kotzk. Kotzker Rebbe. If any of the Talmidim of the Kotzker Rebbe thought that he was into this stuff, like miracles, and he'd throw them out of there as fast as they could. The Beis Medrash of the Kotzker Rebbe, he was yonik. He received this understanding of the role of a tzaddik from his Rebbe, Rav Simcha ben Reb Pshischa, who received it from his Rebbeim, the Yid HaKadosh of Pshischa, and the Chayz of Lublin. But we see, obviously, you all know that after Kotzk, we have the world of Ishbitzer. And after Ishbitzer, Ishbitzer had three main Talmidim. His son, Rabbi Yaakov of Ishbitzer. And then he had Rabbi Leibel Eger, the grandson of Rabbi Akiva Eger. And then he had this tzaddik that we're learning from on this Thursday morning, Rabbi Tzadok Hakohen of Lublin. Now you should know, Rabbi Tzadok Hakohen of Lublin did not agree to become Rebbe until Rabbi Leibel Eger and Rabbi Yaakov Ishbitzer were both nifter. He would not set up shop. He didn't agree to anything. He had such mora malchus. He had such reverence towards where he came from, and he understood the role of the tzaddik as follows, that the Erev Rav comes and tries to mess up everything that could be so holy. And he even infiltrated into Chassidut. So this is an amazing piece. Look what he says here. Amru Chazal. It says in the Medrash, who actually made the Egel? It's like we make such a stink. Am Yisrael fell so low. Am Yisrael. Who made the Egel? Ha'egel ne'esa al yedei Erev Rav. The actual golden calf, those chevra that came to Aaron Hakohen, who did it? It was these Erev Rav. Now by then they were already very much mixed up within the Am, that it was very hard to say, oh, it's just this chevra, the taggers, the tagging along chevra that really didn't have, they just wanted to get out of Egypt. But they had no Inyan with Kabbalah Satorah. They weren't part of the destiny of Am Yisrael. So this Medrash says, Ha'egel na'asa al yedei Erev Rav. Hem ha'nikraim lechred kishichet amcha. Rabbi Tzadok says, when Hashem says to Moshe Rabbeinu, lechred kishichet amcha, your chevra, to answer the question we had at the beginning this year, who's your am? Amo shel Moshe, shu kibel otam kegerim. Hashem is kind of saying to them, this is your achrayus. You took them on as gerim, and
Hashem didn't want him to take the Arab Rav at the beginning.
Nachon,
Yes.
Nachon. So he's saying, own up, Moshe Rabbeinu, own up. Lechred kishichet amcha. This is on you. Ki bnei Yisrael, bnei ha'avot, nikraim am Hashem. We're not called amcha, your people. We're called am Hashem. We're called Hashem's people. She'ikar emunatam b'Hashem yitbarach. That their emunah is not in a real yid doesn't have emunah that it's the tzaddik that makes that twists God's mind and changes God's mind, and he's the one that's not. He's saying that's a foreign concept. Rak Moshe hu hamelamdam leze bilvad. Moshe Rabbeinu is the one that teaches them alone. Uchepedagog, meaning Moshe Rabbeinu is the one that teaches Yidden to believe in God, not to believe in him. If you want to say one thing about Moshe Rabbeinu, he would be the more than anyone that ever gave over a Masoret, he would be the one that gave over to Am Yisrael to believe in Hashem and not put an ounce of energy in trying to convince them to believe in him. God forbid. Now, you see how dangerous this is, because this is happening everywhere. It's been happening for years, where people realize, you could justify yourself, you could fool yourself, and say, this is really L'Shem Shamayim, it's good for them if I just get them to believe in me and follow me, you know? You see this with false leaders, all the time. All the time, everywhere. But Moshe Rabbeinu is only teaching them this, that their emunah should be in Hashem, kepedagog hamegadel et ben hamelech. What's the proper translation for a pedagogue? How do you explain that? Educate, nachon? Just a mechanech. He's saying, what was Moshe Rabbeinu's thing? Moshe Rabbeinu is the mechanech of the Ben Melech. It's very clear who the Melech is. It's very clear who the Ben Melech is. What's Moshe Rabbeinu's role? I'm the tutor. I'm the tutor, right? I'm the tutor. That's all I'm here doing is just tutoring the son and daughter of the king, the princes and the princesses. That was his whole Indian in this world. He knew that. Am Yisrael knew that. The Erev Rav did not know that. The Erev Rav, where do they meet Moshe Rabbeinu? At what point do the Erev Rav meet Moshe Rabbeinu? We don't know exactly, but if we had to guess, speculate, when do the Erev Rav come in contact with this leader called Moshe Rabbeinu? What's that? A little bit later. Probably when the... I guess, oh, you say that's what you're saying.
Like right on the time. As he comes back,
I would say after it starts working. Yeah. I would say after it starts working, meaning after
people tweeted about it.
Right. After word got out, it's working by this guy. He really did, his brother, him, and they went in there, they make alligators, and then the Makot itself, probably only after it started working, they're like, this is a good ride to join. It seems this could be the winning ticket, This is Shayach. It seems like this.
they didn't know the whole history of the Jews beforehand.
So that's what we're saying, is that the Masoret of how it worked until then was oblivious to them.
All that,
different world they're joining. Lachen hem ravu im Moshe. Therefore, they were the ones that were also fighting with Moshe in the desert. Hem hirshu le'atzmam lariv ito. They allowed themselves to fight with this person. Ki lo yityechasu elav ki ish al tivi. They didn't look at him as anything else. We, Am Yisrael, fought with Moshe Rabbeinu. Why? We allowed ourselves to fight with him because we didn't view him as supernatural. We knew that he was a human being. We knew that he was completely, down to earth. Did you hear when Rav Ginsburg was here what he wanted to call the shir? But he ended up not. He called it, he said, I don't know who was still with him at the moment he said this, but he said, I was thinking of calling the shir Moses down to earth. But I thought everyone would think it'd be too new agey and whatever. But Am Yisrael understood that Moshe Rabbeinu was, with them in it. The Erev Rav viewed Moshe Rabbeinu as what?
It's like Pharaoh with supernatural power.
Exactly. Like a Khartoum or something like this, right? Because you have to ask the Yeshua, how could it be? At least, how could it be we were fighting with Moshe Rabbeinu? Well, because we knew he was approachable. We knew that he was in this world, right? Avala Erev Rav, meaning while we're fighting with Moshe Rabbeinu, it's because we know there's Hashem. There's Hashem over us. Aval, next paragraph, Reb Tzadok Hakohen says, Ha'erev Rav hem rak ha'eminu b'Moshe. They only believed in Moshe. They had emunah. It's like when they said Kriyas Yamsuf in the morning, it says, Vayaminu b'Moshe avdo. Not Vayaminu b'Hashem u'b'Moshe avdo. They only had emunah in Moshe Rabbeinu. Why? Because their only experience with spirituality was this miracle maker. Right? They didn't have anything else. They didn't have a moment of Vayizaku Vatal Shavatam Ala Elokim. They didn't have any masoret of a father telling his son, a mother telling their daughter, listen, Hashem hears you. Just cry out to him. Just cry out, right? They only come into the picture when they see this middle person doing these wonders. Avala erev rav rak heminu b'Moshe. Shera'u nisim v'niflaot she'asa. They saw the miracles he was doing. So they're called v'nikraim am Moshe v'lo am Hashem. You know what it could be here? Rav Tzadok is saying that when Moshe Rabbeinu was told lech red ki shichet amcha, Hashem's kind of giving him a little bit of mussar, and he's saying, if you would have pushed the God thing on them, maybe it would have, maybe you wouldn't have gotten stuck now with the cheta ego. But it's hard to say also, as if Moshe Rabbeinu wasn't busy enough, right? Ki lo yadu et Hashem, ki em gashmiim. They're just materialistic beings. They didn't know Hashem. Ve'en masigim rak davar gashmi nigle v'nir'eh lemarit ayin. The way that a materialistic person achieves something, or gets something, is only when something can be seen in front of them. Only then they have an idea of what they want. A materialistic person, right? They can only get what they want if they have a vision of it and it's in front of them. And we know the first thing we have by Har Sinai is Lo ta'aseh lecha pesach v'chol tmuna. Our thing is exactly the opposite. V'lachen amru, therefore they said, Ki zeh ha'ish asher he'elanu mi'eretz Mitzrayim lo yadanu me hayalo. Now look back at the pasuk in the parsha. The Erev Rav saying, Zeh ha'ish. This is the person asher he'elanu me'eretz Mitzrayim. He is the one that got us out of Egypt. We don't know now what happened to him. That picture we had in front of us, which enabled us to still be on a path of something, we don't have that picture. That person's not in front of us anymore. He's the one that got us out of Egypt. What are we going to do now that we don't know where he is? Lo yadanu mehayalo. We don't know what's going on with him now. We need another picture. We need to put something else in the frame, because that's our only way of relating to anything. Again, the Erev Rav they maybe had a good kavanah somewhere. It could be they had a good kavanah somewhere. Their experience of being on this journey was dependent only on how they knew to relate to big things. And the way they knew how to relate to big things was through enaim gashmiot, through materialistic eyes. And now it's amazing. Like when he said, Reb Tzadok said this way like this. When I read that pasuk, and I wasn't thinking that it was Erev Rav, that was Am Yisrael. It's a beautiful pasuk. Why? Ki zeh ha'ish. This is the person that Mamish cared for us so much to believe in Hashem. He took us out of Egypt while telling us to believe in Hashem. We don't know where our Rebbe is. But now he's saying it differently. He's saying, Zeh ha'ish. This is the cause that led to the effect of leaving Mitzrayim. We don't know where that cause is anymore. You understand how Reb Tzadok flipped it over? Does that make sense? Ki zeh ha'ish. It was all... He's the one that's achrei for the whole story. I don't know what happened to him. Reb Tzadok says, and they needed another picture in order to believe. Right? Because without a picture that's revealed to the physical eye, they didn't have any concept of how are you supposed to believe. I want to ask a very hard question right now. Are we the Erev Rav? Based on this last sentence, he said, without having something they could look at and see, they did not know, they could not believe in anything.
Some people say it's the Mishkan was that, right? Like
Tikkun.
also needed something, and Hashem realized that we needed something, and so he gave us something that was like, had his stamp of approval in a way. Right? Like we're longing for the Beis Hamikdash, we're longing to see Hashem with our eyes. I mean, we're holding on, but I don't know.
So your answer is yes, we are the Erev Rav. Just in other words. Sorry?
Maybe we're influenced by the Erev Rav to say that we are the Erev Rav.
No, I know. Listen, I said Agdama, I'm going to ask you something really, whenever I say I'm going to ask something really heavy, be prepared that it's going to make everyone feel vulnerable and bad for a few minutes. That's okay. Meaning, of course we're influenced. We're influenced. That's the whole point of Reb Tzadok Hakohen is saying, of course we're influenced by this. Of course that, as much as we would love to say that our emunah is not dependent on anything, because of our tzad gashmi, right? Because of our tzad of just gashmi, and that's the way Hashem created us. Of course we want something we could look at and say, somewhere inside of us. However, the Torah of Chassidus, the Baal Shem Tov, is always guiding us towards a world where it's a tikkun for the Erev Rav, where it really does, it's Be'emet V'yaminu B'Hashem U'Moshe Avdo. Now, by the time of the Reb Tzadok, things got wild in Chassidus with, people understanding the role of a Rebbe. It got really wild. Reb Tzadok is the end of the 19th century, right? By then, there was a lot of splits and rifts between groups, and it was mainly over this inyan of whose Rebbe is greater, right? And Kotzk and Ishbitz, Reb Tzadok, it's bichlal not. What are you talking about? Do you really think that's what this is about? So I think what he's saying, without saying it, mefurash, Reb Tzadok, and it's amazing that Reb Shamshon, Raphael, Hirsch, and Reb Tzadok were around at the same time, but neither of them saw each other's Torahs, right? I'm sure, I'm quite certain they didn't, Actually, Reb Tzadok is a little bit before Reb Shamshon, Hirsch, but still, they didn't see each other's Torahs, but they're saying essentially the same exact thing. They really are. And Reb Tzadok is saying it in a very, sublime, he's not saying it straight out, but he's saying the moment that you think that it's dependent on how great your Rebbe is in order for things to change in your life, you're missing the point. It can't. You're basically making a cheta. You're making your Rebbe into an ego. It's so deep. It's so heavy. It's so hard to really internalize this, especially when you're brought up in a Hasidic court. You know what the Rebbe is? I'm sure, your Abba, in good times, were able to tell us stories about Satmar, how they view. We don't understand it today. We don't understand. Even those of us that like Hasidic lovers and everything, we don't understand what it means to grow up in a Hasidic court with the Rebbe being the center of the family's life from the moment that you're born. It's a different thing. Now it has all the gedula and richness. You don't need me to be an advocate for being into Hasidus, right? Obviously you understand that. But Reb Tzadok is saying if you lose Hashem in the picture, that's when things start to get messed up. And that's, I'm sure, in the Kav Zchus right now, so much of the sincere worry and concern of people like the Gaon of Vilna and Reb Chaim Volozhiner and the initial, 100%, we could totally understand it.
My mother used to say all the time, my father also, because he grew up in the court, so it was everything was for the Rebbe. My mother used to say you couldn't think without the Rebbe. Every shaila, everything that you did was the Rebbe, the Rebbe, the Rebbe.
Right. Now, again, we're not saying that is wrong, because there's actually a whole tzad there that's so gorgeous and beautiful, but it's only wrong when it's not v'yaminu b'Hashem u'b'Moshe avdo. The Erev Rav we could remove Hashem from the picture. This guy seems to not higher than Hashem, but all we need to believe in him, and he'll just take care of everything because he's been the one that's orchestrating everything from a while back. That's Erev Rav, Reb Tzadok Hakohen is saying.
That as a development of Christianity that couldn't handle it and needed a physical person, a Messiah.
I would see it as a development of humanity as more than Christianity. Mm-hmm. I think it just like you were saying, just because we're just mitzad agashmi, just humanly speaking, I think that's where things are. Yeah.
Makes me wonder about what how the Tzadok or the Rebbe or even Moshe Rabbeinu perceive their responsibility to get themselves out of the way, but to also see what's happening. And like I wonder if it was the Anava of Moshe Rabbeinu that did he not see how the Erev Rav was relating to him, and
good question.
And it's a good question about Hasidus.
Very, very good question. I think that's why every real leader runs away from it in the beginning and does not want to be the leader, like Moshe Rabbeinu. Exactly. He's trying to put the shlichus on someone else. The Rebbe, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, we all know a whole year after his father-in-law passed away, before he accepted the mantle of leadership. By all the big greats, it's the ones that's saying, this is impossible. It's not for me. And then at a certain point, I would say that they're even willing to take on the task, even knowing that what may happen is possible. And that's the way Hashem designed it. It doesn't exempt the responsibility, but it's taken under consideration when you take on the gig. Anyone that takes on this gig of spiritual leadership has to understand that no one is ever going to tell you yishkoyach when you do something good, but they're always going to point out if you do something wrong. And Hashem Yisbarach is telling Moshe Rabbeinu, lechred ki shichet amcha.
Sounds like
the mother of a family. Only a woman can say that in a woman's shir. A man can never say that in a woman's shir. Yeah. Look at the bottom line of here, and we'll finish this. Aval ha'erev rav, ein lahem hasaga ve'emuna. Bottom line is, this erev rav didn't really have hasaga and emuna, rak badavar hamuchash. They could only believe in something that they could sense and feel, something tangible. Something tangible. Now, is that their fault? No. Whose ki'ilu fault is it? It's crazy to say this. It's Hashem's fault. The Chassid says it's Hashem's fault. Everything's Hashem. Like in the emes of all emes, everything's Hashem's fault. Right? But what do we do for it? What do we do for this lemaisa? I think it's a very, very powerful teaching and understanding of the role of leaders, of the role of tzaddikim, but also when I read this piece, I'm not coming out of it and saying, "Wow, Shamshon, Raphael, Hirsch, and Rav Tzadok of Lublin are talking so low about Erev Rav." No, I think they're explaining humanity. Yeah, and I think they're explaining humanity, but why you need Chassidus so badly as well. Because the Torah of Chassidus drives you to the place of seeing that ein od milvado. No matter who's ki'ilu, a mediator. And maybe that's what Yaakov Avinu was telling Rachel, when he said to her, his response was, Atachat Elokim Anochi, what am I like? Right there and making decisions, not pitom. So, or maybe he was answering by saying, actually, I used to think about this, like, it's not a question, it was a statement. He said to her, Hatachat Elokim Anochi. I am not God. I am low, right? I am not God. You're saying, Havali Banim, Hatachat Elokim Anochi. Not Hatachat Elokim Anochi. Am I God? No, I'm not God, right? Whatever, that's also a way of understanding of Tzadok Hakohen's famous statement when he said that when Cain killed Hevel, and Hashem says to Cain, what'd you do? Right? So he said to him, Hashomer Achi Anochi, right? Right? He was saying to Hashem, you're my brother's keeper. By saying, Hashomer Achi Anochi, am I my brother's keeper? He was basically saying to him, you're my brother's keeper, right? Everything's Hashem's fault. But I'd rather be on the side of believing that everything is Kivyachol Hashem's fault than getting mixed up with someone that Kilu is God. I'd rather err on that side, right? The Erev Rav has no understanding of Hashomer Achi Anochi, of Atachat Elokim Anochi. They don't understand that. They have no idea of this. So again, there is a lot to build from this. I know we don't have that much time. And this is a very rich piece. There's a lot to work from this piece, but it definitely brings us into the story of this parsha of Chet HaEgel, I think with a very profound understanding of how could it be, like when you hear a parsha, a Vortish Shabbos, and it starts by saying, sometimes we're so high, and then we're so low. How could it be, and how did we go from such a high place to a place? Well, that's a great drasha, and it's true for a lot of different shiurim in life. But it's not necessarily true by Parshat Ki Tisa. Because by Ki Tisa, the ones that brought out the Egel Azav were not the people that were flying high, witnessing the oneness of God for a year. And especially Sivan. What's that? And they didn't fight the Egyptians.
No, Israel didn't fight Egel.
Oh, so this is how Rabbi Tzadok Hakohen is saying. So that's why I said before, that stench is very contagious. Nachon. It's very, very contagious. Very, very contagious. So we're only learning about it so that we don't identify with it, Khalila, but that we understand this way of thinking of, if, Hashem, you want me to really believe in you, like, you got to give me a picture, right? Whenever you got to give me a clearer picture. As much as we think that would satisfy our soul, it probably really wouldn't. It would satisfy our goof. And even that's for a minute. Exactly. And even that's for a minute. Nachon. Just for a minute anyway. But what would satiate our neshama is so much deeper than anything that can be seen by an eye. Right? And that's our goal. And we should get there. And hold on to our emunah stronger than ever.